Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Babbling Irons video with myself, Mike, and Sloth today. It's been spoke about a lot online, lads, about how West Ham can set up next season, particularly in that midfield role, because we've got quite a few options in there now. We speak about Alvarez. We want to see Paqueta back in the middle, even Kudus coming more centrally. And then you've got others like Souček, Ward-Prowse, someone like Potts, someone like Earthy. So there's a lot of options, and that's before any signings have come through the door. So the focus of this is more how we can use Kudus, Paqueta, and Alvarez as a midfield three, because there's been a lot of talk on things like Twitter that that isn't doable and it wouldn't work, functionally and systematically. We kind of disagree. So we're going to show the stats behind it and as to why. So first and foremost, why do you think that works as a blend? What kind of attributes for all of those three players works in a midfield three?
It's not that they necessarily, they all mix and when they're all going to work instantly. I think when you look at it, we've seen Paqueta playing an 8. I know the argument would be, well, he plays with Bruno Guimaraes and he plays with Casemiro, but he also has played in a double pivot for Brazil. That seems to be ignored, I would say somewhat conveniently sometimes, to help the argument that Paqueta can't play as an 8 and he can't play in a double pivot. It's incorrect because he has done it. And he's done it at Lyon, but he did also traditionally play in a 3 as well for Lyon. But it's more that as a 3, we know they are incredibly hardworking. But more importantly, if we think of how Sevilla used to play with Lopetegui and how we used to have a midfield of either Benega or you'd have Vasquez, both players were arguably better going forward than defensively. Either Benega was pretty good. He was a phenomenal all-round player, but he was more in his elder kind of years. But the fact that he had almost, if he played a 3, 2 quite attacking midfielders and then a very defensive midfielder is again, agreement there from Lily, is very much how I think Lopetegui will look at it. It's going to need them to be incredibly disciplined and a lot more disciplined than what we've probably seen before. However, we're also not, a lot of the conversations we're at about them defensively and how they're undisciplined. That's going to get drummed into them into this system if they are to play that. But more importantly, we are not going to play like we did last year in a system that allowed our goalkeeper to face nearly 200 shots, which is almost a shot every 16 minutes. We're not going to play in that same way. We're going to look to have the ball more. We're going to look to try and control the game. We're going to look to probe and prod. And something we've said is we don't have necessarily ball carriers. You can get Mo central. You've got a ball carrier. If you've got Paqueta there, you've got someone who can play between the lines and has a bit more vision. And Alvarez gives that little bit of assuredness, that little bit of bite. And also, let's be honest, both Kudus and Paqueta, when needed, have that little bit of devilment and that little bit of bite when you need as well. And they'll make the necessary foul if needs be.
Yeah, I think let's look at Alvarez to start with. Obviously, we know what Alvarez's game mainly has been, and it's been that defensive anchor. He was brought in. He's played centre back a lot throughout his career. He's moved into that defensive midfield role, and you can see there where he excels in comparison to other midfielders in the top 5 leagues from last season. His defensive actions per 90, defensive duels 1. He's very good at blocking, intercepting. So he's that anchor of that midfield 3, which is kind of the obvious one out of the 3. But then you've got Paqueta and Kudus. And as you mentioned there, you've got Kudus, who is extremely hardworking. I think that is one element of his game that surprised a lot of West Ham fans this season, is how good he's been defensively for the team and also in transitions offensively. And as you said, he's a massive ball carrier, someone that's going to dribble, really good in tight spaces. So even playing him in that number 8 position, which is where I think he would be best, this is what you would get. And you kind of see, again, this is comparing him with wingers from last season, but you can see where his strengths are. It's all to do with dribbling. It's all to do being direct. It's offensive duels, and he's also got a defensive work rate as well. You see when it's 85, he's in the 85th percentile for defensive duels 1. So again, I'd have no reservations about playing him as that kind of advanced state, because I just think he would be able to play in that Lopetegui system, as you mentioned. Then you've got Paqueta, who we know can play as an 8. We believe would probably be his best position. And he does the industrial work. I think he was like joint highest for tackles at one point last season for West Ham. And he's someone he's that midfielder who could play those deeper passes, progressive passes. You think of someone like a Bruno Guimaraes, someone like that who's got the ability to play a little bit more defensive minded, but his best position is probably an 8. And you'll get the best out of him in in my opinion, in slightly deeper to middle third areas, connecting the play. And then when we bring in, say, a good left winger, you've got Bowen on the right, you've got this top quality striker that we're going to sign, and then you've got Kudus kind of between those lines. I think it would be a really nice blend. So what's your thoughts on it, Sloth? Because we've got the likes of Souček, Ward-Prowse. People are saying we can't really play this midfield free without one of those in there. What are your thoughts on that? This video is sponsored by Emotive. Emotive provide cutting-edge digital services, solutions, and training to companies and businesses of all sizes. Emotive have worked with some fantastic brands in the past, as you can see behind me, the likes of Apple, Google, Tesco, and of course, Babylon Irons. Emotive offer 4 key services, the first being digital solutions, the second being professional training and coaching, the third being fractional experts, and the fourth being AI readiness. We're going to be working with Emotive on our channel to improve how we showcase the data to you guys in our breakdown videos and data analysis videos. If you want to find out more information about how Emotive can work with you, make sure to scan the QR code now, which will take you to emotivetouch.com, where you can find out more details about the company, and the link will be in the description. A massive thank you to Emotive once again for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to it.
I think what's key to remember is that we're going to have a squad. We're going to have to utilize that squad. And one of the big changes moving away from Moyes is going to be the fact that we see a lot more rotation. And it's not just about people saying, oh, well, you know, these players won't feature. They should feature, because that is going to be a huge part of us getting the very best out of the squad across the full season, whether it's in the cups or whether it's in the league alone. But I think when we look at players like Paqueta, you've also got to consider that, you know, potentially we might be missing him for a large chunk of the season. And look, I'm not saying this to be doom and gloom, but I genuinely wouldn't put it past the FA or the Premier League to, as soon as the window shuts, then go, well, actually, we're going to put a ban on him. And then I know it's something to laugh at, but if you ask any other club outside the top 4, if they had a player in that sort of situation, I bet you they would probably say something similar, that they don't feel confident that the rules are going to be fair. And we may well have to deal with him being suspended, but we also have to cover for injuries. So when people go, oh, you know, these players might be unhappy, well, no, they should be getting plenty of time. There should be a lot of rotation. And I think that although we want to see this 3 of Paqueta, Alvarez and Kudus, I think we're going to have to also be very comfortable with the fact that that's very likely to change from week to week. And if we're playing someone who's at the lower end of the table, yeah, that may well be what we go for. But if we're playing someone at the top of the table, maybe that's going to change, and we're going to put, say, Souček as a bit of a double up to make sure we got physicality and we can overpower teams. But one of the key things that I also think is going to be big next season is, you mentioned the style and the change of play. We saw glimpses into what players like Alvarez can deliver going forward. So versatility is an important thing to remember. And just on the counter-attack against Everton, when Alvarez made that run, 50, 60-yard run to score his goal, he's going to have someone who's going to be tucking in behind him, or at least thinking, right, he's going, I'm going to cover. And you've got to have a player who's aware of that. Now,
I don't want Alvarez to do that, to be honest. I'd rather he just sit as the anchor.
But it's the point of him being able to capitalize. And if he can do that 5 or 6 times a season, it might well win you a game. It might well mean that you're 6 points better off than you would have been had he not thought, actually, I can get on the end of that. And if someone like Paqueta just decides to drop deep, whereas opposed to someone maybe like James Ward-Prowse who has lacked that sort of intelligence in his game, I think you get a huge boost in that midfield. And look, although we all want to see Alvarez making those crunching tackles, the key thing is the versatility and the way that we can now look to have a squad who can cover each other, but in depth as well.
Yeah. Well, let's look at kind of how they all compare in one chart. Excellently put together by Mike, I must say. So we've got, Alvarez, Kudus, and Paqueta here in the data, and you can see there's a bit of a blend of defensive attributes, passing attributes, attacking attributes. Does this look pretty well blended to you guys? Because to me, it does, I would say.
I think you've got a really good mix there of overall ability. And when you look at a graph like this, what you're really wanting to see is an expansive spread over the course of for multiple players, because that's where you see, as we mentioned, the versatility, but also the differing roles. And someone like Lucas Paqueta, who is almost everywhere on that graph, is a prime example of, those part of those stats are going to be from when he was on the left side. So you also have to factor in that if he was in the middle, those stats might change and alter. And it's a really, it doesn't sound like it should be impacting on how that graph looks. But if you're asked to play left wing, you're not going to be as involved in the sort of physicality of the game and putting in as many challenges to cover for your central midfield partner. So I think that while that is a good glimpse into what we could see next season, and for me, I look at that and I go, that is a combative, energy-filled, physical midfield. I think it's also something I look at and go, wow, there's really something to build on there as well.
I just think it has all of the components that we would need in a midfield. When I'm looking at it, I'm just trying to see the gaps. I think the only weakness or area of concern that most people have is it a little bit too expansive? Is it a little bit too open? But I think Paqueta's shown that he's defensively good enough to play in that deeper 8 position. It's just, do you think he has the discipline to do it week by week and kind of be that anchor next to Alvarez? And maybe Lopetegui says, look, we're going to take the shackles off a little bit in terms of how you can just roam in the final third, because we saw when Declan Rice did that in the second season, where he was going on and Souček was kind of sat there. Our midfield was so open. It was kind of no man's land in there, and we can't have that happen. So I think Alvarez being the glue, Paqueta being that deep progressive passer who sits in there and, goes forward at times. And then you've got Kudus slightly more advanced, who's going to be working very hard. And as well, with Lopetegui's press, you've got Kudus, Bowen, hopefully another left winger, hopefully a banging striker. Then you've got Paqueta and Alvarez in behind, who are pretty good at, pressing high up as well. We saw Alvarez do that on a lot of occasions last season when we were trying to press it, in moments. So, I think it would be a good balance. I really do. What's your concern with it? Do you have any concerns or reservations with this?
I think the concern is always that it's the concentration levels, because it will require high level concentration. They will need to be very aware of each other's positions, because if one comes out, the other's going to need to drop in. So there is going to have to be that element of them that they show great discipline and awareness of what's happening. And when we talk about the positions anyway, it's up. Formations are now so arbitrary. They don't really mean anything. And, what I find interesting is, like, people say someone like Kudus probably couldn't play as that, advanced or deep 10. But you have someone like Ødegaard at Arsenal, who was an attacking midfielder, who plays in that position. Granted, he plays in a very well-structured team. But there are examples where you can say those players can, under the right management, the right structures, they can actually play in these positions that are deemed outside of their wheelhouse. And I think players like Kudus and Paqueta, they can. The problem is we often look at Paqueta, Alvarez as quite rash in terms of how they burst out. But I do also feel with Alvarez, at times last year, he showed incredible discipline, especially when he knew if he got another yellow card, he was suspended. He showed at times fantastic discipline.
Do you think Lopetegui is going to help with that? Because I know he mentioned as well about Alvarez, being very combative, but maybe trying to reduce the number of yellow cards and cynical fouls as well.
I think the problem is he had to make cynical fouls because of how porous the midfield was last year, and also how much there was put on our defence. Sometimes he just had to make those challenges. And we've often said it, we're too nice a team. So we can't moan when a player's all of a sudden being a little bit nasty and doing the dirty tackles, or maybe pulling the shirt, when we then also moan about being too nice. So you can't have it both ways. You've got to accept that if you want to be a bit more cynical and play the dark arts, that's what you're going to get.
I think even on a Sunday league level, right, or amateur football, if you have confidence in your centre backs, it's going to change how you play. And if there's no way in hell you can tell me that last season people looked at Kurt Zuma and how he was moving and thought, I'm really confident with him behind me. You know, for the seasons before, fantastic defender, but that would have capitulated over the course of the season, and that would have then sort of spread across the midfield, and that worry about a player will spread. It causes issues, and that might well be why Alvarez was as rash as he was, or why he was covering as much as he was. And look,
I mean, there was also times where like Ward-Prowse was playing, you know, very, very deep as a number 8, and we said, you know, it doesn't work and it puts a lot of stress on other players, and he gets left when Ward-Prowse goes in that press, and you know, then he's having to commit these cynical fouls, so it looks worse on him. So I think Lopetegui bringing in that structure is going to help with that, and you know, the way he wants to play more front foot aggressive pressing will help someone like Alvarez and Paqueta, to be honest, even with the cynical fouls that they make.
I think you're spot on there. The hopefully added confidence from the back will be something that we see across the team, because if you have rapid centre backs, you know, it might sound silly, but if you have a rapid centre back behind you, you can push forward that extra 5 yards. You don't have to drop as deep. But there's also the option of, you know, being able to take that extra chance to run forward, like I mentioned with Alvarez. And I think when you can do that, when you have added physicality, but also in depth as well, you know, we had a small squad last season. And if you know you can make that extra run, and say you've had a couple of hamstring injuries in the past, I'm not naming any names, but if you're in the 70th minute, you can make that run, and you can signal to the coach and say, look, I think it's getting to me now.
Yeah.
And then they can throw on someone like James Ward-Prowse for 20 minutes who will go around and chase things. But the overall style of play, it has to be something that we as a side are implementing throughout. And I think if we get that confidence on the ball, if we can get the confidence back in our defence, then that will spread into the midfield. And I don't doubt that Paqueta can do that dirty work. You know, he did it at Lyon, and he did it at Milan. He tried to do it at Milan, but you know, he can do that. He's done it. He's doing it for Brazil, and you don't get into a Brazilian team if you haven't got a bit about you. So I think the key thing to look at is the aspect of the versatility. And even if, say, we want to hit teams rapidly on the counter, we're going to sit Kudus there. If we know we're going to have to be a bit more physical, we can't quite catch a team on the break, we know they've got pace at the back, we can put James Ward-Prowse in there and he can knock it into, say, an Alvarez or Souček double pivot. And that delivery or mixture of ability in the middle of the park is something that all West Ham fans should be looking at and going, we've got something to work with next season. And, you know, fingers crossed Paqueta's available for all of it.
Yeah,
I think it's something exciting.
Agreed. Well, yeah, let us know in the comments. Would you like to see that midfield free next season? Is there anything that you have as reservations? Do you like the look of the stats we've shown you and the blend of that midfield free going into the new season? Let us know. If you liked the video, do leave a like, subscribe to the channel as always. And lads, until the next one.
Come on,
you guys.
Bye.